Okay, I'm about to get started putting this pouch together, and you can see I don't really have a very fancy machine. It's just the model number I think is called a Singer 44S, or otherwise known as a Singer Classic. I put an 18 gauge needle in it to accommodate our number 69 bonded nylon thread, and you can see these only come in big spools, so in order to get this to work on my machine, I've just taken a tip from someone on the internet and put a safety pin here where the spool would normally go, and then just ran that through the machine normally. I've got my stitch length set between 2 and 3, and that gives me about 9 stitches per inch. I believe the industry standard for tactical nylon is somewhere between 7 and 10 stitches, so that should be good. The first stitch I'm going to make is to sew this edge of my Cordura to the zipper. Now this is the top of the zipper. In other words, this is going to be facing, this is going to be outside the bag. This is the bottom of the material. So I got the top of the material, that's the outside of the bag, and that's the bottom. I'm going to sandwich the two tops facing each other. And then I'm going to sew as close to the edge as I can get. I want to fold the material right here. We'll see how well that works out once I run a couple of stitches across the edge there. I'm going to grab some clips and clip this all together. Okay, I got everything clipped up here. I bought some double-sided basting tape, but I think I'm going to save that for a different project. I'm just going to try and run a stitch as close to the edge of the material as I possibly can. And the way I achieved that was I just moved my needle from the center position, which would be that there, as far to the right as it would go. I don't know if you can, if it even shows up, but I've got I don't know if you can see it in the presser foot there. But yeah, it's to the right. I've already buried it into the material to start my stitch. But here goes nothing. Let's see how well it turned out. I don't really see any problems with it. I don't know how well that shows up on camera. But I'm just going to go ahead and run a second stitch right next to it. And I'm just going to move my needle back to the center position. And try and get it lined up exactly where I had it before, but this time it'll stitch right next to it, seeing as how you can kind of tell that the presser foot is pretty much exactly right next to the zipper. Alright, looks like my stitch loosened up a little bit right there. All things considered, I guess it could have turned out a lot worse. Next thing I want to do is fold this material over on that line that I've marked fold, and just run a stitch across the top of the material. I could separate the two halves of the zipper and clip it along this way to keep it in place. I really don't want to separate the zipper just yet. I want to keep that in place. I think I'm just gonna try and fold this over and feed it into the machine and just go slow and stop and keep checking my work to make sure that seam stays straight. I've clipped it at the top and bottom here to get me started, but I really don't have an elegant solution to do this. I'm just gonna run a stitch as close to this fold as I can. Okay, you can probably see that the presser foot is right next to the zipper here. And once again, I've moved my needle to the right position, and that gets me as close to the edge of that fold as I could possibly get. I'm just kind of holding the material in place as I sew along, and I'll just stop every few inches and try and recheck the fold, make sure it's still in place. I might have forgot to back stitch. That's alright, that'll just be a really long back stitch. Okay, I'm just going to check again, make sure we're folded correctly. I think we're doing all right. Anytime I stop and recheck I'm folded where I want to be, it's probably a good idea to leave the needle buried in the material. So so it doesn't slip out of place. That's some basic sewing right there, but if you're new to this, then consider that a tip. Hopefully I don't get too far off track here. One thing I didn't consider when I was making my measurements originally was, am I going to have enough room for the zipper slider to not get caught on this material. It's a pretty large slider, so we'll just figure out how it looks afterwards. I think I'm getting pretty far off track here, actually. That might not have come out as perfect as I wanted it. I'll just crank that wheel for that last stitch, and then we'll do a back stitch. Let's see how we did. Yeah, you can see there's this spot towards the end here where stitching kind of went off course a little bit. I may pull that apart and restitch it, I don't know. Seems like such a little thing, but if I let it go, will it just annoy me later, is the question. Let's check out the back. Yeah, nothing major to worry about here. Sorry if this is not focusing correctly or showing up that well.